Hello everyone, this is a video about genealogy in the book of Genesis, and I've got a Bible, a timeline here for you. I'm going to turn off this video in a while so that it's not distracting, but you can see I've got my Bible right here, and I've got some scripture verses here that I can read from it. And now I will turn this off so that we're just looking at this timeline. If you like, as you go along, you can take a screenshot of this now. I know that you may not be able to see all of the numbers on here, but I'll zoom in at different points and you'll be able to get a closer look at what all of this is. So I'm going to go ahead and explain what this is, and then I'll also read the scripture verses that are part of it so you can see it's like I'm not making this up. It's all right from the Bible. Okay, so Bible timeline. I have numbers across the top here. This line up here at the top represents time starting from the year 0. And 0 in this case is not the year 0 that we think of in history, where it's like AD and BC. This is representing the beginning of when Adam was created. So thinking of it as that point, not the year 0 that we think of in history, but going forward from there to measure the lifespan of different people, and also who was born to who, was born to who, was born to who, was born to who. And guess what? It's recorded there in scripture. Each of these little increments here is a period of 100 years. I will zoom in closer so that you can see the numbers on the chart a little bit better. Okay, so here at the top I have my timeline, and it goes 0, 100, 200, 300, 400, 500, and I'm measuring in 100-year increments. Going all the way to, well, this, the timeline that with all the people that you see on here will go to about 2,300 years. So I'm measuring a period of about 2,300 years, but not exactly that. It's just I'm going out here. Okay, and you might notice I've got a seam here. I had to make I had to put it on 2 pieces of paper. I originally wanted to put all of this on just 1 piece of paper and squeeze it all really tiny, and you can see I wrote tiny, tiny, tiny. But I couldn't fit it on there because my math, I calculated a little bit off. So I had to add another piece of paper in order to make sure that it all fit. Okay, and now you may be wondering, what are all these crazy numbers out here? Okay, so you're thinking, but these numbers don't all match up with the number, this timeline going across. So let me explain what all of these are. Starting with Adam. So Adam at year 0, and if you have read Genesis, if you haven't read Genesis before, I would recommend going ahead and reading it. It's long, yes, but it's fascinating. There are so many interesting accounts in the book of Genesis. And even if you don't want to read the whole thing and you're like, oh my goodness, it's way too long, you could try reading the first few chapters and see what you think of all the interesting things. Some of it is scary, yes. Not gonna lie, there are crazy things that happen there, but maybe that also makes it interesting for you to read. Okay, but starting with Adam, as you've probably already heard before, Adam and Eve, and you're like, who are they? Oh yeah, it's supposed to be the first people that God created, Adam and Eve. Okay, yeah, so we are going to read that, the first man, Adam. And just as a side tidbit, I believe I read that the word Adam means man. So it's like that's who you are and that's what your name is, right? Okay. So anyway, from this year 0, and then you go forward, you're going to notice that the numbers on this timeline on that's for Adam's life going across here, and then the last number on here where it stops, this is to measure Adam's death. So begin year 0. Everybody starts at year 0 for their own life span. And that's why you're going to see next to each name going down the number 0. So these are when the different people are born. Okay, and then going across here, the last number on each person's line is the year of their death. So from 0 to 930, that is the years of Adam. And you're thinking, what in the crazy? I don't know anybody who has lived to be 930 years old. Well, in fact, it does say this right there in the Bible, and I will reference it here. You can see the Bible reference that I put next to each name. That way, as we're going along, I'm going to read it, but you can also look this up yourself. And if you feel like taking a screenshot of that first part of the timeline, now that it's larger, you can go ahead and do that. Okay, so there it is. So the next number on each person's line is when this child of theirs is born. So you may have heard of Cain and Abel as being sons of Adam. Have you heard of Seth? Yes, there's another son of Adam that is mentioned in the Bible, Seth. Maybe your name is Seth too. Oh, did you know it's a Bible name? Also, a lot of people today are also named Jared. Guess what? That's an Old Testament name too. Okay, so here on Adam's timeline, you see the number 130. And then when you go down, that's when Seth was born. So Adam was 130 and Seth, his son, was born. So then you go across and you go, all right, and then it goes all the way over to here to 912. So 912 years old. So you'll notice that this 912 is after the 912 that would be on the overall timeline, but that's because, see, he's starting later than Adam. So this gives us just the numbers for that person, and this gives us the overall years that are being marked, like how much time has passed in total. Now, there are a bunch of other numbers on here as well, and you're thinking, why so many crazy numbers? Well, I thought, hey, if we could figure out, if it says that Seth is born when Adam is 130, and Enosh is born when Seth is 105, well, then you can add it up, right? Simple addition. You can go, 130 plus 105 is 235. So you could check the math there yourself. My math is not always correct. Please don't think that there can't be any mistakes in here, because I often make math mistakes and then I have to correct it. So if you see a math mistake in here, then don't go by this directly. You fix it for yourself. But I think we can do this one, that's simple addition, right? Okay, 130 years plus 105 years equals 235 years. So then we go, when Adam was 235 years old, a grandson of his, Enosh, was born. Aha. Okay, so I'm just doing some simple addition here. So if we keep adding and adding and adding and adding and going across, then you can see I've lined it up with these little lines going down to show like, okay, this goes with this person, right? Go up, 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 up. Okay, so when Adam was 395 and Seth was 265 years old and Enosh was 160 years old and Canaan was 70 years old, then Mahalalel was born. Oh, okay. So now you know what all of these numbers here are about, and you can check them for yourself and just double check and make sure, because I cannot guarantee that I did not make any math mistakes. Okay, but now let's read it. If you have a Bible there at home, or you can also check for one on the internet, it's easy to find one on the internet. You can check and see if I am telling you the correct thing, because that's another thing I always recommend. Don't just go by something I said in a video. How do you know that that's really what's in the Bible? Check it yourself. Check it yourself. So, the version I am going with is the New King James Version. So if you're reading, say, from the NIV, the wording might be slightly different. It should have the same meaning, but that's what I'm going to be reading from. And I will start in Genesis 5, where you will notice it's going to talk about Adam and a bunch of his relatives. So let's see it here. Genesis 5, starting in chapter 3. And Adam lived 130 years and begot a son in his own likeness. So 130 years, he begot a son in his own likeness after his image and named him Seth. After he begot Seth, the days of Adam were 800 years, and he had sons and daughters. So all the days of Adam that Adam lived were 930 years, and he died. I thought, that's very clear. It tells you when this son was born, how many more years that he lived. So you could go, okay, 130 plus 800 is 930. And then it says, okay, 930, and he died. Got it. So I thought that was pretty easy to follow. Some of the other ones are not quite as explicit as you go down the list, but in the beginning especially, I found it's very explicit. It tells you exactly when. Okay, so the next one. Seth lived 105 years and begot Enosh. So 105 and begot Enosh. After he begot Enosh, Seth lived 807 years and had sons and daughters. So there's other sons and daughters. It's not like this is his only child, or, Adam's only child is Seth. No, there's other people, but they're just not on my list here. Okay. So all the days of Seth were 912 years, and he died. Enosh lived 90 years, and he begot Canaan. After he begot Canaan, Enosh lived 815 years, and he had sons and daughters. So all the days of Enosh were 905 years, and he died. Yes. And then there's Canaan. Okay, so the next person is Canaan. Canaan lived 70 years. So this didn't take quite as long, right? Can you imagine if you're 90 or you're 70 and then you're like, "Oh, can have a kid." Today, I think you may have heard of somebody being 70 and having a kid, but 105? Oh my goodness, right? But if you think about it in the total lifespan, then it seems to make more sense, right? Okay, so Canaan lived 70 years and begot Mahalalel. After he begot Mahalalel, Canaan lived 840 years and had sons and daughters. So all the days of Canaan were 910 years, and he died. Mahalalel lived 65 years and begot Jared. And after he begot Jared, Mahalalel lived 830 years and had sons and daughters. I think it's interesting how it's very explicit too, like this is not an only child, there's other kids too. There's all these interesting tidbits that you could pick up when you read in depth and in detail that maybe we just pass over sometimes, like, oh yeah, there were other kids too. It wasn't just this one or just that one. So all the days of Mahalalel were 895 years and he died. So there we go, 895 years. So notice a trend here also that if people are living to usually about 900 or a bit over 900 at this time in history. Okay, I'm going to try to move my timeline. So up here you can see the timeline is moving. And at the death of Mahalalel, the total amount of history is about at 1,300. That's not exact, right? I didn't link it up, so that's not exact. But you could do your own math and you would be able to figure it out for yourself, like how many years had passed total by the time he passed away. Okay, so I'm going to go down. Let's see, I still need Mahalalel, and then, okay, this is the next section. You could take a screenshot of that too if you would like to have it. And let's see where I left off. So I was at Genesis. You can't see that. Genesis 15 to 17 is where I left off. Straighten. There we go. Okay, so now we're on, so of course Mahalalel, he died, we know, and verse 18, Jared. Okay, you probably know somebody named Jared. Maybe you are Jared. Okay, lived 162 years. Oop, that's a long one, right? It's like it took that long before he begot Enoch. And after he begot Enoch, Jared lived 800 years and had sons and daughters. So all the days of Jared were 962 years, and he died. So this is even longer. Did you notice something? That Jared lived even longer than Adam. Surprise! Go back up a little bit. This is how long Adam lived. This is how long Jared lived. That's really, really long. And you might be now thinking, wait, but who lived the longest in all of this? We haven't got there yet. Okay, but let's go to Enoch, because you're going to notice something different about Enoch's lifespan. Enoch lived 65 years and begot Methuselah. After he begot Methuselah, Enoch walked with God 300 years. Notice the difference in the language that's being used there. He walked with God 300 years and had sons and daughters. So he had sons and daughters. So all the days of Enoch were 365 years. Whoa. I don't, that's still really, really long compared to people today, but compared to other people at that time, it looks less, it's less than half. And Enoch walked with God, and he was not, for God took him. So that's why his life was so much shorter. Huh. Now, the son of Enoch is Methuselah. Methuselah lived 187 years. So this one stretches out really long again before you get to the next person. 187 years and begot Lamech. After he begot Lamech, Methuselah lived 782 years and had sons and daughters. So all the days of Methuselah were 969 years, and he died. And that now you're looking and thinking, hey, that's even longer than Jared? Oh my goodness, is there anybody even longer than that? No. Actually, that's the longest lifespan in this timeline. I don't know if you've heard a phrase, as old as Methuselah. Oh, okay. That might start to make sense now. That's a really, really long time. And I'm going to mention something. I've got part of it over here, but I'm going to mention something later when we get to it. But anyway, now let's move on to Lamech. Oh, another interesting tidbit, because we're getting to Lamech. I'm going to talk about what this is right here. Okay, so at Genesis 5:28, Lamech lived 182 years and had a son and called his name Noah. You've probably heard of Noah. In fact, you probably know somebody whose name is Noah nowadays because the name has become more popular again. He called his name Noah, saying, "This one will comfort us concerning our work and the toil of our hands, because of the ground which the Lord has cursed." And you're thinking, what's that about? Go back earlier in Genesis to when Adam and Eve are leaving the Garden of Eden, and then it will make sense. So if you don't know that part, go back earlier in Genesis and go ahead and read that. So after he begot Noah, Lamech lived 595 years and had sons and daughters. So all the days of Lamech were 777 years, and he died. Okay, so I'm going to pause right there and go, hey, this is interesting. This is right before Noah is born. Now you know who Noah's dad is too. If you ever wondered, right? Who is Noah's dad? It's Lamech. Who is Noah's grandpa? Methuselah. Who is Noah's great grandpa? Enoch. Okay, and who was alive when Noah was born and who was not? Now you can find out. Guess what? Here's Adam, and you go across. He's 930. He dies. Down, 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 down. If you stretch it down, you're going to find out that Adam, the first man, Adam, was still alive when Lamech was born, until Lamech was 56 years old. I know my writing is a little bit weird there, and it's hard to see the number. 56. But it's before Noah was born. So by the time Noah was born, Adam had already passed away. But who was alive? Who was alive? Almost everybody else on this timeline. Not Seth. You could see how I couldn't really fit it in here, but Adam's son Seth also passed away before Noah was born. And Enoch is not around anymore. Technically, he didn't die, God took him, but you could see that happens before Noah was born. So, that's some interesting things that you could find out just by doing a little addition and subtraction based on the numbers that you are given. If you like math, that's something there for you. It's easy math too. It's not difficult math to do. Okay, so let's move on from there. We've gotten from Adam all the way to Noah. Adam to Noah. And we're going to go from Noah all the way to Jacob, because that's where the sons of Jacob are mentioned in the book of Genesis, but this is the last person that is mentioned as this is, how old he was, and that's how, this is when he died. So, like, the other people are also mentioned, going forward, their lifespan going forward after those events. But that's why this is my stopping point, is because I'm just doing Genesis here. Okay, so continuing on from Noah, we have his birth. So, Noah, he was 500 years old, and Noah begot Shem, Ham, and Japheth. You'll notice I only listed Shem here because in the next part of the genealogy that I do, I'm only following the line of Shem. And I'm not looking at the other two sons that are mentioned there. So that's why it's just his name. But oh my goodness, okay, that's a really long time. And you'll also notice that a lot of other people had passed away by the time Shem was born. And we're coming up to the flood. Have you heard of Noah and the flood? And do you know how old Noah was when that happened? Hint, I've got it right here. 600 years old. 600 years old. Okay, but I'm not going to describe all of the flood. I'm just going to talk about it in the terms of the numbers that we see on here. If you calculate the numbers of how old are people who died when, right? Because during the flood, a lot of people died. These people died before the flood. And I have a little note right here that says Noah's dad, Lamech. If you calculate it out, he dies 5 years before the flood. So 5 years before the flood, Noah's dad passes away at 777. But interestingly, his grandpa had not passed away yet. At the year of the flood, Methuselah is 969 years old. Okay, so I can't tell you for sure, how did Methuselah die? Did he die because of the flood? Or was he just really, really old and he died for some other reason? Maybe, I can't tell you. All I can say is he died the same year as the flood, according to, if my math is correct. And that was kind of interesting to me as well. Like, okay. All right. So going on from there, this is the next part of the timeline. I will pause it right there. You can take a screenshot if you would like to get this part. Notice something interesting happening here. These are a lot smaller. The timeline is much smaller. It looks like half of the time or less, right? Look at these. Super long. And then it's like, what happened? So that was another interesting thing that can be seen by putting this into a graph. Here's Noah at 950. By the way, 950 is also older than the age of Adam when he died. Did you know? Noah lived longer than Adam. Wow. Okay, so you're thinking, wait, who is longest? Methuselah. Next longest was Jared. You're like, I had never heard of this, right? Who was the second longest living person in Genesis? Jared. Okay. So Methuselah, Jared, third longest living person in Genesis is Noah. Wow. Okay, so fourth place goes to Adam. Adam is the fourth longest living person in Genesis. Okay, now let's go back to here. Notice how the numbers drop off really quick. Here's Shem. Shem, who is the son of Noah, one of the sons of Noah, lives to, we'll say only, but it's a lot. It's still really, really long. 600 years. So that's about a third of Noah's lifespan. Yes, I know. If you know math, you know that's not exactly a third, right? But note it, I'm sorry, it's about 2/3. It's a little less than 2/3. Bad math. Let's fix that. Okay, so 600 years. Then it drops off another couple hundred years. What? 438. Then it sticks around in that 400 range for a couple generations, and then boom, it drops again. Now we're in the 200 range, and then it drops again. Oh my goodness. Now it's 148, 205, 175. So now it's like maybe the high hundreds or the mid hundred. Sorry. Yeah. And we end here with Jacob at 147. Oh, now in today's thinking, like people we know, with all of the health and the things that we know, we think 147? That's like still incredibly long. Incredibly long. And I have no idea why exactly. Before the flood, it seems like people are able to live to 900, and then after the flood, it drops off. I could speculate about the reasons, but I cannot say that I know any solid, hard reason based on what I know. Okay, but you could speculate a lot of things. Why did their life get shorter, and then shorter again, and then shorter again? And if you've ever heard of how long people lived in the Middle Ages, you go, okay. And nowadays we live longer than that, but we still don't live as long as this. So, what is human health? What's human lifespan? All right, but let's move on from there, because we only talked about when Noah's sons were born so far, and I did not get to all of these. So from here, the genealogy gets they don't talk about it yet again for a little while because it's talking about the flood, and I'm going to skip over that information and just go directly to the information that's about genealogy, and then it's going to pick up with this timeline in Genesis chapter 11. So Genesis 7 verse 6 says, Noah was 600 years old when the flood waters were on the earth. So that was why I marked that for this part of the timeline. And then Genesis 9, 28 and 29. And Noah lived after the flood 350 years. So all the days of Noah were 950 years, and he died. So then let's go to Shem, and we'll start again with this genealogy. So picking it up in Genesis 11, verse 10, and we'll go down a ways. But see, then right here it's going to split up again, and there will be a lot of other things that, have been mentioned about Abraham and Isaac and Jacob. So then we have to go through more chapters in order to get to that information. Okay, so this is the genealogy of Shem. Shem was 100 years old and begot Arphaxad 2 years after the flood. So I know on my timeline it looks like it's stacking up here, but then it's not supposed to directly stack up, so I didn't draw a little line going down. So just wanted you to know that. After he begot Arphaxad, Shem lived 500 years and begot sons and daughters. So in other words, there's other children as well. Arphaxad, this is where I was mentioning it's not quite as explicit like how old was this person when they died, so you have to do the math yourself. It's like, we did the math for you, the first, how many people, now you do the math, right? So for Shem, you go, oh, okay, if he's 100, and then after that, he lived 500 years, so you go 100 plus 500 equals 600. Got it. Okay. Arphaxad lived 35 years and begot Salah. So now you'll also notice that the time span between the next generation that's mentioned also gets quite a bit shorter. This is the last one where it's really, okay, that's not true. That's not the last one where it's really long, because there's Abram, which we also know as Abraham, and that's also 100 years here. Okay, Arphaxad lived 35 years and begot Salah. After he begot Salah, Arphaxad lived 403 years. So you add it up, and that's where you get to, and begot sons and daughters. Salah lived 30 years and begot Eber. After he begot Eber, Salah lived 403 years and begot sons and daughters. Eber lived 34 years and begot Peleg. After he begot Peleg, Eber lived 430 years and begot sons and daughters. Peleg lived 30 years and begot Reu. After he begot Reu, Peleg lived 209 years and begot sons and daughters. Reu lived 32 years and begot Serug. After he begot Serug, Reu lived 207 years and begot sons and daughters. Serug lived 30 years and begot Nahor. After he begot Nahor, Serug lived 200 years and begot sons and daughters. Nahor, this is Abraham's grandpa. So if you ever wanted to know that too, like, wait, have you heard that song, Father Abraham? Okay. Anyway, who's Abraham's father? Terah. Who's Abraham's grandfather? Nahor. Who's Abraham's great-grandpa? Serug. Was Noah still alive when Abraham was born? Can you tell? Yes. The answer is yes. Noah is alive when Abraham, at that time called Abram before his name was changed. Oh, okay. See, it's interesting when you do the math. Oh, okay. Yes, we're making math fun. Okay, so I think this is where I was. Nahor lived 29 years and begot Terah. After he begot Terah, Nahor lived 119 years and begot sons and daughters. Now, Terah lived 70 years and begot Abram, Nahor, and Haran. So once again, this is mentioning three sons of Terah, and I'm only listing one here because I'm just going to follow this part of the genealogy down to Jacob. But those three sons are mentioned. All right. Now, from here, I'm going to skip over to when Isaac is born, Genesis 21:5, because there's a bunch of things. You may have heard a lot about Abraham and you go, yeah, haven't I heard a bunch about him? Oh yeah, there's a lot that's written about him. So that's why we're going to have to skip ahead, but you feel free to read all of that in there yourself and find out the interesting things that happened in between these scriptures. Genesis 21:5. Now Abraham, because his name was already changed by that time. Now Abraham was 100 years old when his son Isaac was born to him. Okay, and then I've got on the timeline there his death at Genesis 25:7. This is the sum of the years of Abraham's life, which he lived 175 years. Okay, so this I don't need to repeat. That's just telling you when Isaac was born. But we can go on to this, Genesis 25:26. Yes, afterward his brother came out. This is talking about when Isaac had Jacob. But Jacob's not an only child. In fact, he's a twin. So you may have heard of Jacob and Esau. So that's why so when you hear this, then it will make sense. It's like, wait a minute, what are you talking about? Afterward, his brother came out, and his hand took hold of Esau's heel. So they're babies in the womb, and they're coming out, and one is grabbing a hold of the other one's heel. So his name was called Jacob. Isaac was 60 years old when she bore them. And she, of course, would be Isaac's wife. So when Isaac is 60, Jacob and also Esau are born. All right, so then we can skip way ahead because there's a lot that's mentioned about Isaac, what's happening with Isaac, what's happening with Isaac's sons, with Jacob's life. And then we finally get to Isaac's death in Genesis 35:28. Now the days of Isaac were 180 years. Okay, so we've already got Jacob's birth, and now there's a bunch that happens, and we can skip ahead almost to the end here of Genesis, because there's a bit more after that that's mentioned after that. But 47:27. And 28. We'll just make that correction. See, I'm catching my own mistake still. So Genesis 47:28. And Jacob lived in the land of Egypt 17 years. So this is after when they have gone down to Egypt. If you haven't read that account yet, that's also very interesting in the book of Genesis. So the length of Jacob's life was 147 years. Ta-da! Isn't that interesting? We can see in the book of Genesis, you can find out a timeline if you go from when Adam was created all the way to Jacob, who was born to who was born to who was born to who, going all the way down, and you can see the number of years. So you would be able to also do your own calculations in here. Notice that I didn't really have enough room to make all the calculations in here, but perhaps if you did your own calculations of, like how old was Noah when Tara was born, I don't know, maybe you would find out something interesting about that as well. Okay, I hope you have enjoyed this and that it encourages you to read the Bible, read Genesis or other parts of the Bible, and find out some interesting things.